Chapter 1. There exists a moment in the history of every civilization where reality fractures and everything we believed we knew crumbles before deeper truth. For modern humanity, that moment arrived on a cold November morning in the year 2022, when a team of archaeologists unearthed something that should not have existed. Something that would forever change our understanding of the nature of the human heart and its power to heal not only the body, but the soul itself. What you are about to hear is not a theory. It is not a scientific hypothesis, nor spiritual speculation. It is the revelation of ancestral knowledge that has remained hidden for millennia, protected by silent guardians who knew that humanity was not ready to comprehend the truth about its own potential. But now, when our world finds itself on the brink of spiritual and physical collapse, when diseases seem to multiply uncontrollably and human disconnection reaches critical levels, the universe itself has decided it is time to reveal the deepest secrets of healing. The manuscript we will explore together does not merely contain information. It contains a formula, an energetic equation so precise and powerful that it can transform the cellular structure of any human being who applies it correctly. And the center of this formula is not the mind, as we have been made to believe for centuries. The center is the heart. For the past 300 years, Western science has reduced the heart to a simple mechanical pump, a muscle that propels blood through the circulatory system. This limited vision has disconnected us from a fundamental truth that our ancestors knew intimately. The heart is the center of our deepest intelligence, the portal through which we access dimensions of reality that transcend the physical and the most powerful biological mechanism for healing that the human being possesses. But this truth was not simply forgotten by accident. It was deliberately suppressed by institutions that understood that a human being who masters the power of their heart is a human being who cannot be controlled, manipulated, or limited by external systems of power. A human being who has activated their heart's healing frequency becomes their own doctor, their own healer, their own spiritual guide. They become a truly free being. That is why this knowledge was fragmented, encoded, and distributed among different esoteric traditions that protected it for millennia. The guardians knew that a moment would come in human evolution where this knowledge would be necessary for the very survival of our species. That moment is now. The manuscript that has emerged from the depths of the Himalayas is not just an ancient text. It is an instruction manual for the next phase of human evolution. It is the revelation of how each human being can activate latent capabilities that have remained dormant for centuries. It is the key to healing not only our individual bodies, but the collective wound that afflicts all of humanity. Chapter 2, the story began in the most unexpected way. Dr. Alessandro Mendez, a molecular archaeologist specializing in lost civilizations and professor at Cambridge University, received a phone call that would change the course of his life forever. It was October of the year 2022, and Dr. Mendez was reviewing fragments of Egyptian papyri in his laboratory when the phone rang. On the other end of the line was an interpreter speaking on behalf of a Tibetan monk named Tenzin Norbu, who had remained silent for more than 40 years in a remote Himalayan monastery. The monk had decided to break his vow of silence to reveal the location of something he had been guarding since his youth, something he considered too important to take to his grave. Dr. Mendez, accustomed to receiving calls from people who believed they had discovered extraordinary archaeological treasures, almost hung up the phone. But something in the interpreter's tone stopped him. There was an urgency, a seriousness that suggested this was not another ordinary archaeological find. Tenzin Norbu had witnessed something extraordinary during a snowstorm that lasted 7 days and 7 nights in the highest mountains of Tibet, specifically in the region known as Rongbuk, near Mount Everest. This had occurred when Tenzin was barely 18 years old, during a solitary pilgrimage he had undertaken as part of his monastic training. At the most intense moment of the storm, when snow fell with such force it seemed as if the mountain itself was disintegrating and winds roared like furious dragons, something impossible happened. A ray of golden light, so brilliant it could be seen through the densest snow, pierced through the clouds and directed itself straight toward a cave that had remained sealed for centuries by layers of ice and rocks. Tenzin described the moment with a precision that would make any scientist tremble. The ray was not like a natural lightning bolt. It did not last seconds, but remained constant for exactly 3 minutes and 33 seconds, time that Tenzin measured by reciting a specific mantra he had memorized during his training. The light had a different quality, almost liquid, and when it touched the cave entrance, it not only melted the ice, but instantly vaporized it without generating steam or meltwater. When Tenzin approached to investigate, he discovered that the ray had created a perfectly circular tunnel through meters of ice and rock, revealing a passage that led to an underground chamber. The entrance seemed to have been created specifically for him because it had exactly the height and width necessary for him to walk comfortably without stooping. After walking for approximately 100 meters through the tunnel, Tenzin arrived at a circular chamber about 10 meters in diameter. The walls were covered with crystals that radiated a soft golden light, similar to that of the ray that had created the entrance. But what truly left him breathless was what was found in the center of the chamber. Upon a stone altar that seemed to have been carved from a single piece of quartz rested a manuscript. It was not an ordinary scroll, but something that seemed to be made of a material that Tenzin had never seen before. It was flexible, like parchment, but glowed with a dim internal light, and the letters written on it seemed to change color depending on the angle from which they were observed. What impressed him most was that he could read the text perfectly, despite the fact that it was written in multiple languages that included Tibetan, Sanskrit, Aramaic, Egyptian hieroglyphic, and others he could not identify. It was as if the manuscript automatically adapted to the reader's comprehension capacity. Tenzin spent 3 complete days in the chamber, reading and memorizing sections of the manuscript. It described healing techniques based on activating specific heart frequencies, methods for accessing states of consciousness that allowed communication with what the text called the Universal Light Network, and a specific formula for what it termed complete activation of human soul potential. But the most extraordinary thing was what happened when Tenzin tried to apply one of the techniques described in the manuscript. Following the precise instructions, he managed to synchronize his breathing with his heart rhythm in a specific pattern while visualizing golden light emanating from his heart. Within minutes, he entered a state of consciousness he described as seeing the universe from the heart of God. In this state, Tenzin experienced complete healing of a knee injury he had had since childhood, and additionally received clear visions about humanity's future. He saw a moment in history when humanity would be ready to receive this knowledge, and knew that his role was to protect the manuscript until that moment arrived. When he finally decided to leave the chamber, carrying the manuscript with him, the entrance sealed automatically behind him, as if the mountain itself had decided that the knowledge had been transferred to its designated guardian. For the following 43 years, Tenzin kept the manuscript hidden in his monastic cell, waiting for the sign that would indicate when it was the right time to reveal it to the world. That sign came in the form of a series of repetitive dreams where he clearly saw Dr. Alessandro Mendez working in his Cambridge laboratory. Chapter 3. When Dr. Mendez arrived at Rongbuk Monastery weeks after that phone call that changed his life, he had no idea that he was about to become the custodian of knowledge that would challenge everything modern science considers possible. The journey to the monastery had been arduous, requiring 3 days of walking through mountainous terrain that few Westerners had trod. Tenzin Norbu, despite his 81 years, radiated a vitality that seemed to defy the laws of aging. His eyes had a crystalline clarity that Dr. Mendez later described as seeing infinity reflected in 2 mirrors of wisdom. When he finally handed over the manuscript, something extraordinary happened. The exact moment Dr. Mendez's fingers made contact with the manuscript material, his heart rhythm automatically synchronized in a pattern he had never experienced before. His heart began beating in a specific frequency that generated a sensation of peace and mental clarity so profound that he knew, without a doubt, that he held in his hands something that transcended ordinary human comprehension. But this was only the first indication of the manuscript's extraordinary properties. When Dr. Mendez tried to photograph it using high-resolution digital cameras, the devices simply shut off. When he tried to scan it using specialized equipment, the apparatus malfunctioned inexplicably. It was as if the manuscript had some type of energy field that interfered with modern technology. However, when Dr. Mendez read directly from the manuscript, he could understand its content perfectly, despite the fact that it contained texts in languages he did not completely master. Moreover, when he touched certain sections of the text while reading them, he experienced clear and detailed visions that illustrated exactly what the words described. The scientific analyses that followed were even more bewildering. When they subjected a small sample of the manuscript material to carbon-14 testing, the results were impossible to interpret with conventional scientific models. The material showed datings that extended across different historical epochs, from more than 5,000 years ago to dates as recent as the 14th century of our era. It was as if the manuscript had been written by multiple authors across millennia, but all using exactly the same ink, the same writing style, and the same base material. The scientists who performed the tests admitted it was as if time itself had behaved non-linearly in relation to this object. Spectroscopic analysis of the material revealed a composition that included elements not naturally found on Earth, as well as molecular structures that seemed to organize in fractal geometric patterns of extraordinary complexity. It was as if the manuscript itself was advanced technology disguised as ancient parchment. But what really convinced Dr. Mendez that he was facing something revolutionary were the effects the manuscript had on people who read it. Every individual who had had access to the text reported similar experiences: automatic heart rhythm synchronization, states of extraordinary mental clarity, spontaneous healing of minor ailments, and access to types of intuitive knowledge they normally did not possess. One of Dr. Mendez's team researchers, Dr. Sarah Chen, a neuroscience specialist, experienced something that completely changed her understanding of the nature of human consciousness. While reading a section of the manuscript that described heart-breathing techniques, she spontaneously entered a state where she could perceive other people's electromagnetic fields as colored light patterns. Even more extraordinary, in this state, Dr. Chen was able to diagnose with perfect accuracy several medical conditions of her colleagues simply by observing the energetic patterns emanating from their bodies. When they verified these diagnoses with subsequent medical examinations, all proved to be completely accurate, including conditions that had not yet manifested physical symptoms. Dr. Mendez began to understand that the manuscript was not simply a historical text, but an activation tool that awakened latent capacities in anyone who interacted with it correctly. It was as if it had been designed specifically to function as a key that opened doors in human consciousness that had remained closed for centuries. What Dr. Mendez did not know was that the manuscript contained information that had been deliberately fragmented and hidden by entire civilizations that understood both the power and danger of this knowledge falling into unprepared hands. The complete story of how this knowledge had been protected through millennia was about to be revealed, and that story would forever change his understanding of the true purpose of human civilization. Chapter 4. To understand the magnitude of what had been hidden for millennia, we must travel in time and explore the civilizations that protected this knowledge with their lives, forming an uninterrupted chain of guardians that extended from the dawn of recorded history to the present moment. The first documented reference to the soul formula appears in the most ancient texts of Egyptian civilization, specifically in the papyri found in the deepest secret chambers of the Great Pyramid of Giza. These documents, dating from more than 4,500 years ago, were discovered by French Egyptologist Auguste Mariette in the year 1850. But their content was considered so revolutionary that it was immediately classified by the academic authorities of the time. Egyptian priests did not consider the heart simply as a physical organ. For them, the heart was the Aib, the center of consciousness and the seat of the soul, but more importantly, it was what they called Nebet en Ankh, which translates literally as the Lord of Life. The texts describe the heart as an organ that possesses its own intelligence, capable of communicating directly with the Neteru, the divine principles that govern the universe, through specific energetic frequencies. The murals of pharaonic tombs, particularly those found in Tutankhamun's tomb and in the funerary complexes of Saqqara, show extraordinarily detailed representations of the heart radiating waves of light that extend toward the cosmos. These waves are represented with mathematical precision, following geometric patterns that modern science has identified as specific electromagnetic frequencies. Most fascinating is that these ancient Egyptians developed specific hieroglyphs to describe different types of energetic emissions from the heart. They had distinct symbols for what they called the light of the heart that heals, the light of the heart that knows, and the light of the heart that transforms. Each of these types of emission corresponded to specific frequencies that priests learned to generate consciously. In Egypt's mystery schools, particularly in the Temple of Dendr and in the complexes of Edfu, the most advanced initiates learned specific techniques to synchronize their heart rhythm with what they called the pulse of Ra, a cosmic frequency they believed was the heartbeat of the universe itself. These techniques were so valued that they were only transmitted orally from master to disciple, and never written completely to prevent them from falling into the hands of those who had not demonstrated the purity of heart necessary to handle such power. The few written fragments that have survived speak of a breath of the heart that could cure any disease, rejuvenate the physical body, and connect the practitioner with higher states of consciousness where they could access the wisdom of the gods. The texts describe specific cases of priests who lived more than 150 years maintaining youthful vitality, and of healers who could cure blindness, paralysis, and even restore amputated limbs using only techniques based on the conscious emission of specific heart frequencies. But the Egyptians were not the only guardians of this knowledge. Thousands of kilometers away, in the highest mountains of the Himalayas, Tibetan monks independently developed surprisingly similar practices they called Sem Ningpo Selba, which translates as meditation of the radiant heart. The oldest Tibetan texts, written in the 8th century of our era by Master Padmasambhava, describe the heart as the dwelling of Rigpa, the primordial consciousness that exists beyond the limitations of the individual ego. These texts explain that when a practitioner learns to generate what they call the clear light of the heart, they can access what they term the space where all hearts are one. Tibetan monks discovered that when they managed to synchronize their breathing with the heart's natural rhythm in a specific pattern that followed the mathematical sequence known as the golden ratio, they could generate healing states so powerful they were capable of healing physical wounds in a matter of hours, regenerating damaged tissues, and even influencing local weather. Monastic records from Sami Monastery, some of which have remained hidden for more than 1,200 years, describe documented cases of monks who achieved feats that modern science would consider impossible. The monk Milarepa, for example, was documented by multiple witnesses as capable of generating sufficient body heat to melt snow in a radius of several meters around him during Tibet's most severe winters, using only heart-breathing techniques. Another documented case is that of monk Longchenpa, who supposedly could cure incurable diseases simply by placing his hand over the patient's heart and synchronizing his heart rhythm with that of the sick person. Records indicate that in a state of deep synchronization, both hearts began to emit a visible light that could be perceived even by observers who had no spiritual training. But perhaps the most extraordinary case documented in Tibetan records is that of Nun Machiglabdran, who developed a technique called chod, which literally means to cut. This technique involved using specific heart frequencies to cut the energetic connections that maintain diseases in the body. Texts describe how Machig could cure mental illnesses, addictions, and even spiritual possessions using only the emission of specific cardiac frequencies combined with mantras that resonated in harmony with the heart's electromagnetic field. Most fascinating is that these traditions, separated by thousands of kilometers and centuries of difference, reached identical conclusions about the nature of the heart. All described the heart as a portal or bridge between the physical world and higher dimensions of existence. All developed techniques to activate what they called the healing frequency of the heart. And all kept this knowledge secret because they understood that humanity was not prepared to handle such power without the spiritual wisdom necessary to use it responsibly. In Native American traditions, particularly among the Lakota, Hopi, and Cherokee peoples, shamans spoke of the singing heart, referring to a state of consciousness where the heart literally emits audible sound frequencies that can heal not only the individual, but the entire community and even the earth itself. The most powerful healing rituals of these traditions always included techniques to synchronize the hearts of all participants in a common frequency, creating what they called a collective healing field. In this state, they reported the ability to heal diseases affecting entire peoples, influence weather patterns to end droughts, and even communicate with the spirits of animals and plants to restore ecological balance in complete regions. Lakota shaman Black Elk described in his visions a future time when all humanity would remember how to use the power of the heart to heal the sacred wound that afflicts both individuals and Mother Earth. His prophecies, recorded at the beginning of the 20th century, speak specifically of ancestral knowledge that would emerge from the world's highest mountains to remind humanity of its true nature as cosmic healers. Chapter 5. Even in European esoteric traditions, which were harshly persecuted during the Inquisition and forced to operate in secret for centuries, medieval alchemists spoke of the philosophical heart as the key to the great work. The transformation of both lead into gold and the mortal human being into an immortal and spiritually realized being. Alchemical texts by figures like Paracelsus, Nicholas Flamel, and the mysterious author known as Fulcanelli contain constant references to specific cardiac frequencies that can activate transmutation processes at the cellular level. These texts, written in complex codes to avoid religious persecution, describe techniques for what they call the volatilization of the heart of Mercury, a metaphor that refers to the process of activating the heart's electromagnetic frequencies to transform the molecular structure of the physical body. Paracelsus, in particular, wrote extensively about what he called the inner physician, describing the heart as a natural alchemical laboratory capable of producing substances that can cure any disease known to man. His writings suggest that when the heart reaches certain states of resonance, it can literally transmute the body's basic elements, converting toxins into medicines, sick cells into healthy cells, and even reverse aging processes. Nicolas Flamel, famous for his supposed achievements in metal transmutation, left secret manuscripts that described the true objective of alchemy, not the creation of physical gold, but the activation of what he called the gold of the heart, a specific frequency that, when achieved, converts the human being into a golden man, a being who has transcended the limitations of ordinary mortality. What makes this alchemical knowledge particularly relevant is that many of the symbols and diagrams found in medieval texts correspond exactly with modern descriptions of the heart's electromagnetic field. The famous diagrams of the alchemists' 7 seals, for example, show energetic patterns that are virtually identical to contemporary measurements of cardiac frequencies in different emotional states. But perhaps the most explicit tradition regarding the power of the heart were the Sufi mystics of Islam, particularly the school founded by Jalaluddin Rumi in the 13th century. Sufis developed specific practices called sohbet and sama that involved synchronizing the heart rhythms of multiple practitioners to create states of spiritual ecstasy where they experienced direct union with the divine. Rumi wrote specifically about the heart as the Kaaba of the soul, the sacred center where the human being meets God. His poems, although written in metaphorical language to avoid religious controversies, contain precise descriptions of techniques for activating what he called the breath of the compassionate heart, a state where the heart generates frequencies that can heal not only the individual, but all beings who come into contact with that frequency. The whirling dervishes, Rumi's disciples, perfected meditative dance techniques that automatically synchronized their heart rhythms in specific frequencies. In these states, they reported the ability to perceive what they called the network of light that connects all hearts, an experience they described as seeing golden threads of energy emanating from each person's heart and connecting with a luminous matrix that encompassed all existence. Ibn Arabi, another great Sufi mystic, wrote complete treatises on what he called the science of the heart, describing the heart as a perception organ that can access levels of reality completely inaccessible to the 5 ordinary senses. His writings include detailed maps of different stations of the heart, each corresponding to specific frequencies that allow access to different types of divine knowledge. Most extraordinary is that all these traditions, developed independently over thousands of years and in completely separate cultures, reached the same fundamental conclusions about the nature of the heart. All described the heart as much more than a physical organ. All developed specific techniques to activate electromagnetic frequencies of the heart that generated extraordinary healing effects. And all spoke of a state of consciousness achievable through the heart, where the individual connects with a universal intelligence that transcends the limitations of ordinary knowledge. But what truly changes everything is what modern science has begun to discover about the heart in the last 3 decades, extraordinarily validating what these ancestral civilizations had known for millennia. And here is where the manuscript found by Dr. Mendez reveals its true power, because it not only confirms these ancient knowledges, but provides the precise scientific explanations of why they work, and more importantly, how any modern person can apply these techniques to activate their own healing potential. The discoveries you are about to learn will not only revolutionize your understanding of the nature of the human heart, but will provide you with the practical tools to access capabilities that have remained latent within every human being for millennia. Capabilities that, when activated correctly, can transform not only your physical and emotional health, but your very understanding of what it means to be human in this extraordinary and interconnected universe. Chapter 6. What modern science has begun to discover about the human heart in the last 3 decades is so revolutionary that it has forced a complete rewriting of textbooks in medicine, neuroscience, and quantum physics. And the most extraordinary thing is that each new scientific discovery validates exactly what ancestral traditions had taught for millennia about the heart's true power. The HeartMath Institute, a scientific research organization established in California in the year 1991 by engineer Doc Childrey, has conducted more than 30 years of rigorous research on the human heart that has completely revolutionized our understanding of this vital organ. Their discoveries have been published in more than 300 peer-reviewed scientific journals and have been validated by prestigious institutions like Stanford University, Massachusetts General Hospital, and the National Institute of Health of the United States. The first revolutionary discovery of the HeartMath Institute is that the heart generates the most powerful electromagnetic field in the human body. This field is not simply a scientific curiosity, but represents a fundamental mechanism of biological communication that had been completely overlooked by conventional medicine for centuries. The electromagnetic field generated by the heart is 60 times larger in amplitude than the electromagnetic field generated by the brain, and can be detected and measured with precise scientific instruments at a distance of up to 3 meters from the body. But here comes the truly astonishing part. This electromagnetic field is not static, but changes form instantly and dramatically depending on the person's emotional state. Dr. Roland McCready, research director of the HeartMath Institute and one of the most respected scientists in the field of cardioenergetics, has scientifically documented with precision that when a person experiences emotions like love, gratitude, compassion, appreciation, or forgiveness, the heart's electromagnetic field immediately transforms into what they call a state of coherence. In this coherent state, the heart generates electromagnetic wave patterns that are mathematically perfect, following harmonic sequences that resemble the most beautiful music ever composed. These coherent waves not only affect the individual themselves, but have the capacity to influence heart rhythm, brain waves, and even genetic expression of other people who are within the electromagnetic field's radius of action. Dr. McCready describes this phenomenon as energetic communication, and his studies have demonstrated that when a person achieves a state of deep cardiac coherence, they can literally transmit states of healing and well-being to other individuals without any direct physical contact. This scientifically explains why certain people have the natural capacity to heal others simply with their presence, and why the great spiritual masters of history have been described as beings who radiated a palpable healing energy. In a particularly notable experiment conducted in the year 2017, the HeartMath Institute studied the effects of cardiac coherence on a group of professional healers while they worked with patients. The results were extraordinary. When healers achieved states of deep cardiac coherence before beginning their sessions, the effectiveness of their treatments increased by an average of 300% compared to sessions where they did not use cardiac coherence techniques. Even more surprising, researchers discovered that patients began to show cardiac coherence patterns similar to those of their healers, even when they did not know that these techniques were being applied. It was as if coherent hearts acted like biological tuning forks, automatically synchronizing other hearts in their radius of influence. But the HeartMath Institute's discoveries go much further than simple interpersonal influence. They have documented that when the heart achieves states of deep coherence, it generates specific frequencies that activate a cascade of positive biological responses throughout the body. The parasympathetic nervous system automatically activates, reducing cortisol levels, the stress hormone, by an average of 40% in just 3 minutes of practice. Simultaneously, production of DHEA, known as the youth hormone, increases significantly, as does production of immunoglobulin A, the most important antibody for immune function. Nitric oxide levels, crucial for cardiovascular health, increase dramatically, while inflammation markers like C-reactive protein consistently decrease. Dr. McCready and his team have identified a specific frequency of 0.1 Hz that seems to be the fundamental healing frequency of the human heart. This frequency, technically known as heart rate variability resonance, corresponds exactly with what ancestral traditions described as the breath of the cosmic heart. When the heart vibrates at this specific frequency, all body systems enter harmonic synchrony, creating what researchers call psychophysiological coherence. In this state, the body activates its natural self-healing mechanisms with extraordinary efficiency, optimizing the functioning of virtually all organs and body systems. Most fascinating is that they have discovered that these cardiac coherence frequencies can be measured and reproduced with exact scientific precision. This means it is possible to teach any person how to consciously activate these healing states, converting what was once considered a mystical gift reserved for a few into a scientifically reproducible skill that any human being can develop. Chapter 7. But perhaps the most revolutionary discovery about the heart is the revelation that it possesses its own independent nervous system. Dr. J. Andrew Armour, neurocardiologist at the University of Montreal, was the first to scientifically document that the heart contains approximately 40,000 specialized neurons, forming what he termed the brain of the heart. These cardiac neurons are not simply cells that transmit electrical signals. They are fully functional neurons capable of processing information, forming memories, and making decisions independently of the cranial brain. In fact, studies have shown that the heart sends more information to the brain than it receives, suggesting that in many aspects, the heart acts as a superior information processing organ. Dr. Beatrice Lacey, neuropsychologist at the Fels Research Laboratory, conducted pioneering experiments that demonstrated the heart can make correct decisions before the conscious brain has even processed the available information. In her studies, participants showed changes in their heart rhythm that indicated the correct answer to complex problems up to 7 seconds before they were conscious of having found the solution. This phenomenon, scientifically known as cardiac intuition, suggests that the heart has access to information sources that transcend the normal capabilities of conscious mental processing. It is as if the heart could know things that the analytical mind cannot perceive through the 5 ordinary senses. Dr. Antonio Damasio, neuroscientist at the University of Southern California and one of the most respected researchers in the field of neuroscience, has proposed that the heart functions as a somatic marker, a biological system that continuously evaluates the emotional and energetic environment, providing crucial information for decision-making that the conscious brain cannot access directly. Studies conducted at the Institute of Heart Math have documented that when people learn to consciously access this heart intelligence, their capacity to make accurate decisions in complex situations improves dramatically. Entrepreneurs who practice cardiac coherence techniques before making important decisions show a 50% increase in the effectiveness of their decisions compared to those who rely solely on mental analysis. But heart intelligence goes beyond simple improvement in decision-making. Researchers have discovered that the heart processes emotional information in ways that the brain cannot replicate. When a person experiences an emotion, the heart responds instantly, but not simply as a passive receiver. The heart analyzes the energetic quality of the emotion and generates a specific response that influences all body physiology. Coherent emotions like love, gratitude, and compassion generate cardiac patterns that optimize the functioning of all body systems. Incoherent emotions like anger, frustration, and anxiety generate chaotic patterns that compromise health and well-being at all levels. Dr. Sarah Childrey, principal researcher at the HeartMath Institute, has documented that people who regularly practice techniques to generate coherent emotions show significant improvements in immune function, blood pressure, blood sugar levels, and even in markers of cellular aging. It is as if the coherent heart functioned as a master regulator that automatically optimizes all biological processes. Even more extraordinary, they have discovered that heart intelligence can access information that is not limited by time and space in the way we normally understand these concepts. In controlled experiments, participants in states of deep cardiac coherence have shown the ability to perceive future events, access information about distant people, and demonstrate forms of knowledge that defy conventional scientific explanations. Dr. Dean Radin, senior scientist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, has replicated these experiments in multiple laboratories around the world, confirming that when the heart reaches specific coherent states, it seems to connect with what he describes as a non-local information field that transcends the apparent limitations of space and time. This means that every human being possesses, within their own heart, a natural intelligence system that can access levels of information and wisdom that go far beyond what ordinary analytical thinking can provide. The key is in learning how to consciously activate this cardiac intelligence and how to interpret the information it provides. Chapter 8. But no modern scientific discovery has been more revolutionary than the revelation that elevated emotions, consciously generated from the heart, can literally reprogram genetic expression and activate healing processes that conventional medicine considers impossible. Dr. Bruce Lipton, a cellular biologist and pioneer in the field of epigenetics, was the first to scientifically demonstrate that genes do not control our biology in the deterministic way that had been believed for decades. In his laboratory at Stanford University, Lipton showed that the emotional and energetic environment of cells can turn the expression of specific genes on or off, dramatically altering cellular function without changing the DNA structure itself. His experiments showed that when cells are exposed to coherent electromagnetic frequencies, similar to those generated by the heart in states of love and gratitude, they activate genes that promote growth, repair, and regeneration. Simultaneously, they deactivate genes associated with inflammation, aging, and disease. Dr. Candace Pert, a neuroscientist and pharmacologist from Georgetown University, discovered that emotions are not simply psychological experiences, but manifest as specific molecules called neuropeptides that circulate throughout the body, communicating directly with every cell and influencing its functioning. When the heart generates coherent emotions, it produces specific neuropeptides that act as healing messages directed to all the body's systems. These neuropeptides can activate the regeneration of damaged tissues, optimize immune function, and even influence the expression of genes related to longevity and vitality. Dr. Joe Dispenza, a neuroscientist and author of research on neuroplasticity, has documented extraordinary cases of people who have used techniques based on the conscious generation of elevated emotions from the heart to cure diseases that medicine considers incurable. In his studies, he has followed thousands of people who practice what he calls elevated heart meditation, a technique where participants consciously generate emotions like gratitude, love, and compassion while visualizing light emanating from their heart. The results have been so extraordinary that they have been documented and verified by prestigious medical institutions around the world. He has documented cases of people who have healed advanced stage cancer, regenerated cartilage in degenerated joints, reversed autoimmune diseases, and even restored function to nerves that had been damaged by accidents. In all these cases, the only intervention used were techniques to consciously activate the healing frequencies of the heart. Dr. Dispenza's studies show that when a person enters states of deep heart coherence while generating elevated emotions, their body begins to produce extraordinarily high levels of immunoglobulin A, the most important antibody for immune function. In some cases, levels increase by up to 400% compared to baseline levels. Simultaneously, markers of inflammation decrease dramatically, stem cell production increases significantly, and telomeres, the structures that protect chromosomes and are associated with aging, lengthen in a way that would normally take decades of healthy living. Dr. Himal Patel, a molecular geneticist at the University of Wisconsin Medical Center, has specifically studied the effects of coherent emotions on genetic expression. Her research shows that just 8 weeks of regular practice of heart coherence techniques can activate more than 1,400 genes associated with healing, while deactivating 700 genes associated with inflammation and disease. Even more fascinating, she has discovered that these genetic changes can be transmitted to future generations through epigenetic mechanisms. This means that when a person heals using the heart's frequencies, they are not only healing their own body, but are literally improving the genetic health of their future descendants. Dr. Masaru Emoto, a Japanese researcher, conducted experiments that showed that coherent emotions can even influence the molecular structure of water. Given that the human body is composed of 70% water, this suggests that the heart's frequencies can literally restructure the molecular composition of our bodies at a fundamental level. In his experiments, Dr. Emoto exposed water samples to different types of emotions and then observed the formation of crystals when the water froze. Water exposed to coherent emotions like love and gratitude formed perfectly symmetrical and beautiful crystals, while water exposed to incoherent emotions like anger and fear formed deformed and chaotic crystals. When these same emotional frequencies are consciously generated from the heart and directed toward the body, they have similar effects on the water that makes up our cells, literally reorganizing the molecular structure of our physical being from the most fundamental level. Chapter 9. But perhaps the most extraordinary discovery of all is the revelation that the human heart emits photons, particles of pure light, and that these light emissions carry specific information that can influence physical reality in ways that defy our conventional understanding of how the universe works. Dr. Fritz Albert Popp, a German biophysicist at the International Institute of Biophysics, was the pioneer in the discovery of what is known as biophotonics, the study of ultra-weak light emissions produced by biological systems. His revolutionary research showed that all living beings emit light, but that the human heart is the most intense source of these photonic emissions in the entire body. The photons emitted by the heart are not simply a byproduct of cellular metabolism, as initially thought. They are coherent light emissions that carry specific information and can be consciously modulated by the emotional state and level of coherence of the heart. Dr. Popp discovered that when a person enters states of deep heart coherence, particularly when generating emotions like unconditional love or deep compassion, the intensity and coherence of the heart's photonic emissions increase dramatically. More importantly, these photons begin to exhibit properties of quantum coherence, similar to photons produced by high-precision lasers. Dr. Mei-Wan Ho, a biophysicist at the University of London, expanded this work by demonstrating that coherent photons emitted by the heart can synchronize with photons emitted by other hearts, creating what she describes as interconnected light fields that can extend over considerable distances. In controlled experiments, she has documented that when two people simultaneously enter states of heart coherence while focusing on generating mutual love, their photonic emissions automatically synchronize even when they are separated by physical barriers or distances of several kilometers. This phenomenon, known as biological photonic entanglement, provides a scientific explanation for experiences that have traditionally been considered mystical or paranormal. It explains how people can intuitively feel the emotional state of loved ones at a distance, how healers can influence the health of patients without direct physical contact, and how prayers and meditations directed toward other people can have measurable effects on their well-being. Dr. Stuart Hameroff, an anesthesiologist and professor at the University of Arizona, in collaboration with theoretical physicist Sir Roger Penrose of the University of Oxford, has proposed that these coherent photons emitted by the heart can interact directly with what they call the quantum information field, the fundamental matrix of information that underlies all physical reality. According to their theory, when the heart emits photons in specific states of coherence, these photons act as quantum keys that can access information stored in the quantum field and can also deposit new information into this field, influencing the probability of certain future events. This would provide a scientific explanation for phenomena such as distance healing, precognition, and the ability of some people to influence seemingly random events through intention directed from the heart. Dr. Lynn McTaggart, a science journalist and researcher, has compiled evidence from over 600 scientific experiments demonstrating that conscious human intention can influence physical systems at a distance. Her analysis reveals that the most powerful effects consistently occur when intention is generated from states of deep heart coherence. In one of her most notable experiments, participants trained in heart coherence techniques were able to influence the growth of plants located hundreds of kilometers away simply by directing loving intention toward the plants during specific periods. The plants that received this coherent intention showed significantly higher growth rates and greater resistance to disease compared to control plants. Dr. William Tiller, professor emeritus at Stanford University and an expert in materials physics, has developed devices that can measure the intention emissions generated by people in states of heart coherence. His experiments have shown that these emissions can be recorded onto simple electronic devices and then played back to generate measurable physical effects, even months after the original intention was generated. In his most extraordinary studies, he has shown that coherent intentions generated from the heart can alter the pH of water, change enzymatic activity, and even influence the behavior of quantum systems such as random number generators based on radioactive decay. All these discoveries point to a revolutionary conclusion. The human heart is not simply an organ that pumps blood, but is literally a biological transmitter capable of emitting coherent light signals that can influence physical reality at the quantum level. When we learn to consciously activate the coherent frequencies of the heart, we become conscious participants in the creation of our own reality. Chapter 10. This scientific understanding of the power of the heart leads us directly to the very heart of the ancient manuscript and its deepest revelation, that the human heart is literally a dimensional portal, a point of connection between the physical reality we perceive with our senses and higher dimensions of existence that normally remain invisible to ordinary consciousness. Quantum physicist Dr. David Bohm, a protege of Albert Einstein and one of the most respected theorists of the 20th century, proposed that reality consists of an invisible implicate order that contains all the information of the universe and a visible explicate order that is the physical manifestation of that information. According to Bohm, the coherent human heart acts as a decoder that can access information from the implicate order and manifest it in the explicate order. This theory corresponds extraordinarily with what the ancient manuscript describes as the universal light network, a matrix of pure information that instantly connects all points of space and time. The manuscript explains that the heart, when vibrating at specific frequencies of coherent love, can tune into this network and both receive information and transmit intentions that influence the very structure of reality. Dr. Ervin Laszlo, a philosopher of science and systems theorist, has proposed the existence of what he calls the Akashic field, a quantum information field that preserves the memory of everything that has existed and contains the seeds of everything that can come to exist. According to Laszlo, the human heart in states of deep coherence can connect directly with this field, accessing wisdom that transcends the limitations of personal and cultural knowledge. Experiments conducted by the Institute of Noetic Sciences have provided scientific evidence for this theory. In controlled studies, people trained in heart coherence techniques have demonstrated the ability to access specific information that they could not have obtained through conventional means. In one of the most notable experiments, participants in states of heart coherence were able to describe with extraordinary accuracy specific historical events they had never studied, details about the lives of people they had never known, and even information about future events that were later verified as accurate. Dr. Julia Mossbridge, a cognitive neuroscientist at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, has documented what she calls presentiment perception, the heart's ability to perceive future events before they occur. Her studies show that when people are in states of heart coherence, their hearts begin to respond to future events up to 10 seconds before these events actually happen. This phenomenon suggests that the coherent heart can access information that exists outside the normal limitations of linear time, connecting with what quantum physicists call temporal non-locality, the idea that all information about past, present, and future events exists simultaneously in a timeless quantum field. Dr. Hal Puthoff, a theoretical physicist and director of the Institute for Advanced Studies in Austin, has proposed that the coherent heart can function as a quantum antenna, capable of tuning into different dimensional frequencies. According to his theory, just as a radio can tune into different stations by changing its frequency, the heart can access different levels of reality by adjusting its electromagnetic frequency. Spiritual traditions have spoken for millennia of multiple dimensions or planes of existence. Modern quantum science suggests that these dimensions are not separate physical places, but different frequencies of information that coexist in the same space. The coherent heart acts as the biological mechanism that allows us to change channels and access information from these higher dimensions. This explains why the great mystics and healers of history have described experiences of connection with higher intelligences, spiritual guides, or the universal mind. They were not experiencing hallucinations or fantasies, but were actually accessing information from dimensions of reality that normally remain inaccessible to ordinary consciousness. The ancient manuscript specifically describes techniques for what it calls opening the heart's portals, precise methods for tuning the heart's frequency to different dimensional levels. It explains that when a person masters these techniques, they can consciously access the wisdom of what it describes as the masters of light, beings of higher intelligence that exist in higher frequency dimensions. More importantly, the manuscript reveals that this ability is not a special gift reserved for a few spiritually advanced individuals, but is a natural function of the human heart that has been temporarily suppressed by living conditions that keep most people in states of emotional incoherence. When a person learns to consciously generate states of love, gratitude, compassion, and forgiveness from the heart, they automatically raise their vibrational frequency and begin to access information from higher dimensions. This process does not require years of esoteric training, but simply the correct understanding of how the heart's frequency works and the consistent practice of the appropriate techniques. Chapter 11. And here we arrive at the moment that everyone who has followed this journey of discovery has been waiting for. It is the moment to reveal the complete soul formula, the specific technique that the ancient manuscript describes to fully activate the healing potential of the heart and access the multidimensional capabilities that have lain dormant within every human being for millennia. This is not simply another meditation technique or relaxation exercise. It is a precise spiritual technology developed over millennia by the most advanced masters of the wisest civilizations in human history. It is a formula that can literally transform your biology, expand your consciousness, and activate capabilities that modern science is just beginning to understand. The soul formula consists of 5 specific phases that must be performed in exact sequence, each designed to progressively activate different aspects of the heart's potential. When practiced correctly and with the proper intention, these 5 phases create a cascade of transformation that affects every level of your being: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. First phase, the activation of the sacred rhythm. The first phase consists of establishing what the manuscript calls the sacred rhythm, a specific breathing pattern that automatically synchronizes the heart with the most powerful healing frequencies. This is not an ordinary breathing exercise, but a precise technique that must be performed with exact mathematical timing. Sit comfortably with your spine straight and place one hand on your heart. Close your eyes and begin to breathe as follows. Inhale for exactly 5 seconds. Hold your breath for 5 seconds. Exhale for 5 seconds. And hold your lungs empty for 5 seconds. This 5-5-5-5 pattern must be maintained for a minimum of 5 minutes. The crucial part is that during each inhalation, you must visualize golden light entering through the top of your head and flowing directly into your heart. During each exhalation, visualize this light expanding from your heart throughout your entire body and beyond, creating a field of light that extends approximately 3 meters in all directions around you. After 5 minutes of this breathing, your heart rhythm will have automatically synchronized to the frequency of 0.1 hertz that scientists have identified as the fundamental healing frequency. You will feel a distinct sensation of warmth and expansion in the heart area, indicating that you have successfully established the sacred rhythm. Second phase, the activation of coherent emotions. Once the sacred rhythm is established, you must activate what the manuscript calls the 3 master emotions that generate the most powerful heart coherence: deep gratitude, unconditional love, and universal compassion. Maintaining the 5-5-5-5 breathing pattern, you must consciously generate each of these emotions for specific periods, allowing each one to completely saturate your electromagnetic field before proceeding to the next. Begin by generating deep gratitude for something specific in your life for exactly 3 minutes. Not superficial gratitude, but gratitude so intense that you can physically feel your heart expanding and warming. Vividly recall the experience for which you feel gratitude, allowing the emotion to intensify until you feel your heart literally radiating this frequency. After 3 minutes, transition to unconditional love. This does not mean love for a specific person, but pure love directed toward all existence. Visualize your heart as a golden sun radiating love toward all living beings, toward all creation, toward universal intelligence itself. Maintain this frequency of unconditional love for 3 minutes. Finally, generate universal compassion for 3 minutes. Visualize all of humanity, all beings who suffer, all who seek healing, and allow your heart to radiate compassion toward all of them. Feel how this compassion expands beyond the boundaries of your physical body, connecting with the universal light network that the manuscript describes. Third phase, the opening of the heart portal. With coherent emotions firmly established, you can proceed to what the manuscript considers the most crucial phase, the conscious opening of what it calls the heart's portal. This is the phase where the direct connection with the unified field of consciousness is established. Keep your attention focused on the heart area and visualize a small point of bright golden light at the exact center of your physical heart. With each breath, see this point of light gradually expanding, becoming brighter and more radiant. As the light expands, mentally repeat the phrase that the manuscript identifies as the vibrational key. I am the light that heals. I am the love that transforms. I am the consciousness that unites. This phrase must be repeated exactly 21 times, once, with each breathing cycle. During the repetition of this phrase, visualize the golden light from your heart expanding until it completely fills your physical body, then expanding beyond your body to form a sphere of light approximately 6 meters in diameter with you at the center. At this point, if the technique is being performed correctly, you will experience what the manuscript describes as the connection with the light network. This manifests as a distinct sensation of expanded consciousness, where you suddenly feel connected to something much larger than yourself. You may perceive information, images, or knowledge that does not come from your ordinary analytical mind. Fourth phase, directed healing intention. Once the connection with the unified field is established, you can consciously direct healing energy toward specific goals. The manuscript explains that in this elevated state of heart coherence, your intention becomes a creative force capable of influencing physical reality at the quantum level. If you wish to direct healing toward your own body, visualize the golden light flowing from your heart toward any area that needs healing. See this light penetrating every cell, every tissue, restoring original perfection and activating the natural mechanisms of self-healing. If you wish to direct healing toward another person, visualize that person completely surrounded by the golden light emanating from your heart. See the light penetrating their being on all levels, bringing healing, peace, and complete restoration. The manuscript emphasizes that this technique works equally well regardless of the physical distance separating you from the person to whom you are directing the healing. For planetary healing, expand your visualization to include the entire Earth, seeing the planet surrounded and permeated by the golden healing light flowing from your heart toward all living beings, healing both the collective wound of humanity and the imbalances in the planet's natural systems. Fifth phase, integration and sealing. The final phase is crucial to fully integrate the activation and seal the energetic changes that have occurred during the practice. Without this phase, much of the benefits of the technique would quickly dissipate. Gradually begin to reduce the visualization of the expanded light, slowly bringing it back to the center of your heart, but retaining all the information, healing, and activation you have received during the practice. Visualize the light condensing in your heart as a shining golden jewel that will remain active 24 hours a day, continuously radiating healing frequencies throughout your entire system and into your environment. End the practice by placing both hands on your heart and declaring aloud 3 times, "I fully accept my nature as a multidimensional healing being. I integrate this activation into every cell of my body and every aspect of my life. So it is. So it will be. So it is done." Keep your hands on your heart for an additional minute, feeling the new frequency that now pulses constantly from your heart center. This frequency will continue to intensify and expand each time you repeat the complete practice. Chapter 12. The manuscript explains that when this technique is practiced daily for a minimum of 21 consecutive days, what it calls the Great Activation occurs, a permanent transformation that alters the energetic structure of the practitioner at a fundamental level. The physical effects include significant strengthening of the immune system, improvement in all cardiovascular health markers, optimization of hormonal function, and activation of cellular regeneration processes that can reverse many signs of aging and disease. The emotional effects include profound emotional stability that does not depend on external circumstances, the ability to generate states of peace and joy at will, and a natural compassion that extends to all beings. The mental effects include extraordinary mental clarity, dramatic improvement in the ability to make sound decisions, access to forms of intuitive knowledge, and the ability to perceive creative solutions to complex problems. The spiritual effects include a conscious and constant connection with universal intelligence, the ability to receive direct guidance from higher dimensions of consciousness, and the awakening of what the manuscript calls multidimensional perception, the ability to consciously perceive and interact with levels of reality that normally remain invisible. After 90 days of consistent practice, the manuscript indicates that the practitioner will have developed what it calls heart mastery, a state of consciousness where healing abilities, manifestation, and expanded perception become natural and spontaneous. Chapter 13. But the final revelation of the manuscript is perhaps the most extraordinary of all. It explains that when a sufficient number of human beings activate these heart capabilities, what it calls planetary morphogenetic resonance will occur, a tipping point where the elevated frequency of heart coherence becomes the dominant frequency in Earth's energetic field. Biologist Rupert Sheldrake has proposed the theory of morphogenetic resonance, which suggests that when a critical number of individuals in a species learn a new skill, that skill automatically becomes easier to learn for all members of the species, regardless of the distance separating them. Applying this theory to the activation of the heart's capabilities, the manuscript prophesies that a time will come when it will be enough for approximately 1% of the human population to master these techniques for the latent potential in all of humanity to be automatically activated. At that moment, according to the manuscript, humanity will experience what it calls the Great Awakening, an evolutionary transformation so profound that it will mark the birth of what will essentially be a new human species. A species that will no longer be limited by the illusions of separation, scarcity, and suffering that have defined the human experience for millennia. This new humanity will have conscious access to the multidimensional capabilities that have always been our birthright: instant healing, telepathic communication, conscious manifestation of reality, direct access to universal wisdom, and the ability to live in perfect harmony both among ourselves and with all of Earth's natural systems. The manuscript concludes with a statement that summarizes all its teaching in a single transformative truth. The coherent human heart is the most advanced technology in the universe, and when humanity remembers how to use it consciously, it will also remember its true nature as divine co-creators of reality. The soul formula is not just a personal healing technique. It is the key to the conscious evolution of our entire species. It is the bridge that will take us from the era of separation and suffering to the era of unity and the full realization of our infinite potential as beings of light, consciously connected with the creative intelligence of the universe itself. Now you possess this knowledge. Now you hold in your hands the key that can open the doors of your own transformation and contribute to the awakening of all humanity. The question that remains is simple. Are you ready to remember who you truly are and to assume your role as a conscious healer in the great transformation that is happening on our planet at this historical moment? The manuscript has fulfilled its purpose. The soul formula has been revealed. Now your true journey of discovery, transformation, and conscious service to the evolution of human consciousness begins. The heart knows. The heart remembers. The heart is the way back home.